Herbert's 100 Harem. His communicator buzzes and he shifts his arm to control both joysticks on the arcade machine, one with the crook of his elbow, the other with his hand. He glances at the screen as he plays. Oh, okay. He notes steering around a sharp turn in the racing game and then glancing around a bit as he accelerates again. Two Carib, one with shaggy fur, one without, both gray with brown hair. Huge racks of horns, and Shaggy's got little nubs on hers. He mutters as he glances around and then spots them entering. He nods and tucks the communicator away. VIPs located, he begins his passive bodyguard work, glancing towards the couple out of the corner of his eye as they walk through the large arcade and shifting so that if things go wrong, he can race to protect them. "What's wrong?" Neely asks to his left. He's technically racing her, but neither of them are doing more than just hanging out. After more than a few sessions of her hiding in his room to get away from some of the bullying, Herbert had asked Ambassador Khleila for advice. It turns out that just telling them all to knock it the hell off is usually enough, as it's considered shameful for things to get to the point that the husband has to reprimand his wives. Well, Herbert begins as his racing avatar goes into an impressive tailspin as he flubs a turn and crashes and burns in a very literal manner. Some VIPs showed up. I'm now on passive bodyguard duties, which just means I'll be keeping my eyes open on a couple of people, and if things start going wrong, I swing in like a hero and help them out. Nothing complicated. Oh, she mutters, the patterns of surprise and excitement painting themselves in the axiom naturally flowing through her head. It had taken him a bit to actually figure out what he was missing, but when he finally saw, he was able to easily tell each of them apart and what they were feeling as well. Axiom really does make the galaxy go around outside of cruel space. Neely, for instance, was actually one of the shyer ones. Of course, with 100 women in a group, you're going to have shy ones. Tomboys, girly girls, proper refined girls, nerdy girls, hard-ass girls, tricky girls, and so many other types. Neely's one of the shy ones, also halfway into girly girl. She's very delicate and signed up for an arranged marriage because she thought she had no chance in hell of ever actually finding her way into a marriage otherwise. Then came the clusterfuck that involved Herbert getting hitched to them all. So, what's up with them? Thara, one of his Yaoya wives, asks. These VIPs, what's so important about them? Thara presses, and Herbert just shrugs. I don't know. I just got orders to help them if things start going wrong. That is the extent of my knowledge. He lies. He recognizes Knife Top. If there's any amount of regression, he won't be protecting her, but protecting others from her, likely starting with the poor girl's mother. Don Shaw, someone shouts, and Herbert curses as he turns to regard the clatterhooves. Holly looks terrified and her mother furious. Crap, I'm on the clock, Herbert remarks before fading out of sight and touch of everything as he sprints to the source of the call. His jacket and pants shed behind him to leave him in only the low-profile armor and the weapon strapped to it. He pulls on the mask and visor from their hiding place as he moves. The cries of alarm from his own brides are distant and behind him as he homes in on the source. Desert Nagasha with demonic face paint. 3 weapons interspaced among her hands and a jangling collection of Kutha bracelets to functions as totems. Her tail is completely covered by what seems to be a drape, but it's bunched up in a way to suggest armor plating. Her torso is much the same, with her breasts almost angular in their armor. The arms and the head are the only things exposed. He can't afford to take her alive. She turns from her threatening of the clatterhooves and raises her 3 totem-bedecked hands. A torrent energy blasts out at him from her palms to disrupt his cloak and phasing at once while suspending him in the air as he tries to resist the sheer force. Her eyes go wide in shock and she falters for a moment. All the time he needs to get the aim right and gently squeeze his pistol's trigger. The Nagasha hits the ground with the back of her head open for all to see the mutilated chunks inside. "That was a human weapon!" someone in the crowd exclaims in shock as he turns to the Clatterhooves. "Activate your distress beacons and get moving. You two need to..." Herbert's command is cut off when his body erupts into goosebumps and he skids sideways to dodge a bolt of plasma from behind. He grabs a small pellet from a bandolier on his left thigh and throws it into the ground to get some cover behind the enormous plume of dark smoke that erupts in response. Shouts from the entrance and the crackling sound of lasers going off to be matched with the bangs of gunfire. He holsters his pistol and runs to the VIPs before being hit with the force of a freight train courtesy of Holly. Ow. He groans as he sits up with a hand on his ribs. They feel broken. He's hurt, badly, from a single panicked punch. "I'm on your side," he gasps out. "Ow. Oh, dear goddess, I'm so sorry. You came at us so fast and it was just reflexes to..." Holly's apology is cut off as Herbert focuses the axiom ever so and adjusts his chest with an audible crackling sound and a sigh of relief. "It's all right. You just dislocated a couple of ribs, didn't break them. They're back in place," he says before rolling his shoulders. "We have a few moments at most. I can get you both out of here and back to friends, but you need to trust me." You're human, aren't you?" Holly asks, and Herbert nods. "Yes, now please, we need to go, but I can't do this if you fight me." Herbert almost begs, and both women grab his hands. He channels the axiom through all three of them and they all fade away. "We can't be seen and we can't be touched. We're going straight through and into friendly lines." He explains, then tugs on them to lead them into and through the crowd, literally. Panicked faces, concerned appearances, and then a standoff between criminals and a small team of men. He leads them through a wall and then from around a corner waves to one of the men in the back on his communicator. "We got freaking ninjas?" the soldier asks, and Herbert shrugs. "You going to be staying with us?" Herbert shakes his head in response. Holly lets out a somewhat hysterical giggle. "Do you talk at all?" the soldier demands, and Herbert shakes his head again. "We have freaking mute ninjas. Let me guess, you were with us the whole time, but ninja, right?" Herbert's nod gets the man to twitch. "Fine, get going. I'll take these two to safety." Herbert then does a dash behind Holly and vanishes. He can hear the soldier swear in surprise before yelping as Mother Clatterhooves gives him a swat for swearing. Herbert shifts through the wall and into the building before rushing to where he left his wives behind. The mission is the mission, but it's effectively over, and he needs to look to his wives. They're just teenagers and are not ready for this kind of madness. That he had to leave them behind makes him feel like a bastard. Neely's holding on to his clothing and looking around in a panic before clearly spotting the axiom bleeding off him and heading his way even as Thara looks around. He fades into view after tucking away his hood and visor, a finger to his lips and a pleading look in his eyes as he walks up to Neely, who gapes at him as she hands him his clothing. "Thank you." "What is going on?" she demands as he slips the loose pants on over his outfit followed by the jacket. Two women under the protection of the Undaunted were cornered by one of their enemies. I rushed in for a last-second save, but there were a lot more of them. I got them out, but now we need to... "This is the police. Everybody on your knees and weapons on the ground," a voice blasting through a speaker outside declares, and the sounds of fighting dies off. "Is everything going to be all right?" Thara asks as she and the rest of the girls that had come along for this afternoon out gather around him. "Should be. Neither I nor any other humans used anything we're not legally allowed to have at all times. Cultural effects, you see. You have a very hard time going anywhere without finding trouble." Neely scolds him, and he shrugs. "Please, be honest. What's going on?" one of them asks. "It's Barizi, the one he's known the longest. The one that waited by his bed when he was in a restorative coma. If he owes anyone an explanation, it's her." He glances around to make sure no one can overhear them and guides them all to a secluded table that he checks for bugs before glancing up at the camera and then sitting with his back to it. About 2 weeks ago, an investigation into possible hostility stumbled into an attack from the Umbral organization aimed at what we thought was a possible hostile party. I can't give many more details beyond shenanigans happened, but we were made very aware of the Umbral and started poking our noses in on the branch that opened fire on us. "How much a part of this are you?" Baridzi asks, and he musses up his hair. "That bad?" I never stopped being a soldier of the Dauntless, or rather, the Undaunted now. Aside from the first incident, I've had something to do with most everything afterwards. I can't tell you how due to operational security or much in the way of details, but I can tell you this much and a little more. Herbert admits, and there's nodding all around. How do those 2 women tie in? They're Carib, right? We rescued one of them when we retaliated against the Umbral. Again, I can't say how, but some rescues were involved. I can't give you names or more details, but I can state that we're taking this very seriously, and after this attack it's likely they won't be staying on Centris. They're under our protection, and that's not something we're lax on. Did you kill someone?" Thera asks quietly. Herbert sits up a little straighter and sighs. "Yes. My choice was the heavily armed and armored criminal, or her would-be victims. It was an obvious decision." Herbert answers before glancing through the crowds. Most of the police attention is on the body he left behind. Things are soon to get awkward. "Is it hard?" Baridzi asks him quietly. "No, and that's what's hard about it. Killing someone's a big thing, but it's so easy, too easy. In situations like this with clear-cut good and bad, I don't think I'm going to lose any sleep. It's awful when you think about it, but that's the truth. I don't know who that Nagasha was. All I know is that she was connected to the Umbral in an awful way. I either gave a slave the peace of death or put down a selfish monster, and in doing so I spared the lives of a wounded child and her mother. So no, this one was not hard, not at all." "You are an apex predator," Baridzi says in seeming astonishment. "Where did that come from?" Herbert asks. "I was worried. Some peoples bottle things up and pretend to be okay for the sake of the herd, but others just deal with things with pragmatism. It's usually what separates a prey species from a predator one. Prey peoples, they tend to grow skittish around Zayden and Yaoya, and I've gotten over my hang-ups, even had some fun with them." "You're still scared of the Paris," Neely protests, and Herbert grins and motions for them to lean in. "I'm actually fine with the goofy little purr-crabs, but it's funny to pretend not to be. Too good of a joke to stop making. I'll stop pretending to be scared when it stops being funny." "Wait, that's how you play with them?" Thera demands, and Herbert chuckles. "You're so weird. I'm a species from the deepest, darkest place of the least hospitable space in the galaxy. If I wasn't weird, then something weird would be happening.